All right, welcome back. We're here at the Terranea 5-star resort with Ralph Loura, SVP CIO Lumentum, part two. So much to talk about, so thanks for hanging in there and being patient, Ralph. We're at the CI 100 celebrating you all, great leaders. And so in episode one, part one, we talked about Ralph, the chief storytelling officer, Ralph, the chief truth-telling officer. Now I want to jump into Ralph, the chief motivation officer, the CMO, and Ralph, the chief sustainability officer. Sound good?
Sounds good.
We'll dig in here. So, Ralph, you're no stranger to the VUCA acronym, right? It's a VUCA world. And for those who haven't heard that before, Bob Johansen, futurist up in the Bay Area, really made that popular. But we live in a world that's volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity. Right, so a lot of chaos, a lot of confusion. The next few years are not going to be any easier. Change is not just constant, it's accelerating. But yet, Ralph, I've known you for a long time. I've never seen you so energized. So talk about that. Where's that come from?
Well, it's interesting. I, again, was just talking to one of my leaders on a call earlier this morning. And I was pointing out, through pandemic, we've all had our kind of ups and downs and ebbs and flows in terms of engagement or excitement level or whatnot, because it can wear on you over time.
For sure.
And it was interesting. I was saying how we have never been busier. We have 2 acquisitions we just closed on. We're doing acquisition integration. Kicked off our calendar year with the projects. We're growing and expanding the company. We have a massive expansion project of our factory in Thailand. We're doing this new factory floor system that we're deploying. We've never been busier. And I was saying, I feel great. And he's like, I feel great too.
Wow.
And part of this is I think activity, focus energizes me. And I think it energizes most people.
Right.
Nobody wants to sit and polish the 10Q every quarter and, kind of do the boring maintenance work. It's exciting to do something meaningful. So yeah, I think it's easier to stay positive when there's activity and things going on.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I think, particularly in the VUCA framing, there's a lot you can do to not end up becoming overwhelmed by something like volatility, for instance. If you like things to be simple, you like things to be predictable, that can be really unsettling. So how can you put yourself in a position where you're ready you're actually anticipating it to be different?
Right.
How can I actually run toward the volatility in a way that I feel like I'm in more control and I'm not being overwhelmed? Uncertainty, same sort of thing. The one thing I'm sure of today is that I have no idea what's going to happen tomorrow. And so how do I, again, put myself in a frame of mind for that and so on? I was talking to a friend of mine, Tim, who you were recently talking to as well, about travel. And I said, travel is worse now than it seems like it's ever been, the logistical challenges and the staff shortages. So you've got to put yourself in almost like you have the little Zen switch you turn on in your head going, you know what, I'm not going to let this bother me. I know it's going to be what it is. And I'm going to come prepared, and I'm not going to pace and get excited. I'm just going to go with the flow. And so there are times, a lot of this is about mental mindset and kind of preparedness. And I'm a big believer in mindset. And when we talk about motivation,
yes,
90% of motivation is helping people find the right mindset to engage what's happening around them.
So what's the mindset around, you and I are both big believers in that, in spite of all that stuff going on, there's never been a better time to be an IT leader, right? Yeah. But it does take a new mindset, a new muscle, showing up different, maybe moving out of the comfort zone. How do you do that yourself?
So it's kind of been, in some ways, a secret to my career over time, is every time I found something uncomfortable, or I felt like someone else knew more than I did, or this new thing happened and I was kind of out of the loop, that's what I would go to the thing that was uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. So I was a coder early in my career, and I structured programming and this classic stuff, and then object-oriented programming came out. And I knew nothing about it, and it was a bit of a mystery. So instead of, digging that, I went and I spent 3 months teaching myself object-oriented programming. Yeah. more recently in the last 4 or 5 years, a blockchain as a technology came out, AI, ML. So you can look at blockchain and kind of be people are like, what are digital coins and why should I matter? And is that real? So I went out and I kind of educated myself, read material. I kind of looked at the code to some degree, understood kind of some of what is going on, tried to understand the macro models of, because a huge part of blockchain and Bitcoin and others isn't the technology itself, it's the ecosystem that the coin mining and so on creates, which allows you to create, scale, networks faster and with the network effect and so on. So I spent time understanding that. So then I could have a point of view. So then it didn't scare me anymore. It wasn't an unknown. It didn't create that icky feeling in the pit of your stomach anymore. It was like, oh, I know this, I got that. I have a point of view, informed enough that I can now move on to something else.
Because the question's going to come. You don't want to be surprised. So back to anticipating and, moving out of the comfort zone, Ralph, one of the phrases that drives me crazy, and I know it does you too, the notion of fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
And it just seems disingenuous. It doesn't seem, you know what I mean? So you've got a different way of thinking about that.
Yeah, it's frustrating, right? Because because that's very disingenuous, right? It's about being fake and plastic and kind of, not having any meaning behind it or meat behind it. It's really more about, and I'm drawing a blank on the word I used last time. It's more about fighting for it and delivering until you make it, right?
Yeah.
It's
Well, I mean,
failing until you make it.
Face it.
Yeah.
I mean, you said, instead of fake it, face it.
Right. And
till you make it.
So it's the word I was looking for. It's to face it till you make it.
Yep.
And part of the thinking is, I'll guarantee that your CEO, CMO, CFO doesn't know the answer to every question they get every day.
Right.
They're not faking it. But you know what? They're going to take the hard question from the analyst, from the employee, from the investor, the partner, the customer, and they're going to take it head on and go, okay, you know what? That's a good question. Let me go research and come back to you. Or, gee, off the cuff, here's how I'm thinking about that at the moment. But that's a fair criticism or whatever. Here's how I think about that, and here's what I'll do to come back to you. And so, kind of facing the music and dealing with some of those uncomfortable things up front is how you make it, right? It's you've got to go through, to some degree, go through the journey to end up at the other end.
Right. No, that's good. We've been through a lot of discussion here. We haven't talked about Lumentum, and maybe people don't know the company, but they certainly are touched by Lumentum in a lot of ways. So what attracted you there? You answered the call, you came doing some big things. You mentioned the acquisitions.
Yeah.
So talk about Lumentum.
Well, so it's interesting. Again, I'm a big believer in people. Again, an old boss used to say, people don't work for companies, they work for people.
Right.
And so, in fact, I left my prior role. We had a PE firm invest in the company, and I took the opportunity to leave and take a little time off. And I was kind of, being frankly kind of picky about what the next role was going to be. And I had a number of opportunities, and none of them kind of resonated. And then I got a call from an old friend, Brian Lilly, and Brian was CIO for Equinix for years.
Yeah.
Is on the board of Lumentum. And Brian said, hey, Lumentum's looking for a new CIO. You'd be great. You should talk to Alan. And I'm like, I don't know. They're a semiconductor, photonics. That doesn't seem super exciting. He said, no. You got to talk to Alan. Do me a favor. You guys would hit it off. Okay. So before I talked to Alan, I did a little research. It turns out, so Lumentum had spun out about 7 years ago from JDSU. Well, Chris Betty, who's now the CIO at ServiceNow, good friend, who was CIO at JDSU. So, hey, Chris, you used to work with Alan. Tell me what he's like. And by the way, not just Alan, but Vince and half the other team. Great. So I got a little insight as to how they are as leaders, what the business is like. Tim Campos, who was CIO at Facebook for a number of years, Tim was on the board at JDSU. Hey, Tim, as a board member, what was it like to deal with these guys? Tell me about the business. What excited you? What didn't? Gus over at Flextronics knew the team well, and so I literally talked to 6 people before I met Alan. And by the time I met him, I felt like I knew him. Right? And I'm like, I already had this assessment. He and I are going to get along. Like I like his style, his candor, his transparency, his kind of way of leading and working. I respected the team he had put together, before I even met them, right? So first and foremost, it was what attracted me to Lumentum was a team, a great leadership team, a solid culture.
Yeah.
And then to tell you a story of one of the things that attracted me to Alan. So I started October 22nd, 4 years ago.
Okay.
So this coming October will be my 4-year anniversary at Lumentum. And then we had our annual holiday party a month or so later. And it was the first time my wife met our CEO. And so she bumped, hey, like, how's it going? And, great. And she goes, so how's he doing? And Alan's comment was, I don't know, he hadn't done anything yet. It's too early to tell. And that's kind of Alan's sense of humor and personality, but also fair. Like,
Right.
hey, it's a CIO job. Like, I don't know, he showed up, he's been in a few meetings, he seems intelligent, but like, I don't know,
Right.
hasn't done anything yet.
That's awesome.
Which is a good reminder of like, hey, we're all, you're only as good as the last project you delivered or the last thing you got done.
That's right. That's good. So I want to pivot to Ralph, the Chief Sustainability Officer, the CSO, and new organization that you've been very integral to, Sustainable IT. And I really want to encourage people to go look at the website, sustainableIT.org.
Yep.
When they do that, they're going to see some faces of like a who's list of like rock star leader. Like who are some of the people on your board?
So we've got, you mentioned Rich Gilbert's a member. We've got the CIO from Choice Hotels. We've got a number of banks and financial institutions represented. We've got clothing brands. We've got the CIO of Waste Management, the largest waste processor in North America, which you'd think, well, that's ironic. Why would somebody who collects garbage for a living be on a board that's worried about the environment? And it turns out, their whole business model is based on the environment. Their business model is about recycling and reuse and sustainable management of waste stream and making sure that we can all live and work in a world that will be the kind of world you want to live and work in generations from now. So we have a great board. So the quick story on Sustainable IT was 10 years ago I was I won't say I was kind of in the right place at the right time. I happened to be had a common set of problems with a great set of CIOs. And a bunch of us got together and we were over, actually Rebecca Jacoby was at Cisco at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And Becky got together, Don Duet was at Goldman, Fong Tram was at DuPont, Tony Scott was CIO at Microsoft at the time. So there were 8 of us got together. And we were all kind of complaining in a way about, we all have, these massive financial models, the pivot table from hell, like this big Excel spreadsheet that keeps track of budget and allocation and costs and so on. And Becky has a manufacturing background. And she coined it really appropriately, said, hey, she talked about the bill of IT, sort of like a bill of material. Bill of material, hey, I'm going to build a watch. Well, there are 2,000 parts in a watch. And so the watch is the one, and you explode that to there's 8, there's the band and the da-da-da. And it explodes out all the parts and components and the screws that go in to make the watch. A bill of IT is the same way. If you have a service, my service might be, it might be end user compute. It's a PC to work on. Well, right. That service includes a laptop that's provisioned and includes endpoint management, security, it includes a set of software that's deployed and run. It includes the network. It includes the cloud services to run email and so on, and so on and so on and so on. So there's a bunch of pieces that go in. It includes the help desk and service desk and the personnel that are responding. So there's a massive amount that goes into creating that one thing, which is provisioning a laptop for a user.
Right.
And if you really want to understand the costs of IT or the how do I improve something or how do I make something more efficient, you really have to break it down to those components and understand those choices. And we all have those problems. Every CIO has, again, this massive spreadsheet that keeps track of all this. And there's a couple of companies. There's a company called Apptio that built a cloud-based platform to do that work. There were a couple others that have come along the way. ServiceNow bought one of them and it has some modules. There's several others out there. But several of us basically had the same problem. And we said, so even using a tool like Apptio, what was missing was a common model, a reference model.
Okay.
So you start with Apptio and you go, oh, well, now I have to figure out how do I want to represent my bill of IT for end user services? Oh, this goes here. We all do it the same way, or mostly. So we kind of got together and we created a framework. So we said, hey, we ended up calling it the Aptio Technology Unified Management Framework that created this, a common way to organize, measure some of those low-level empowered services that helped us a lot. And we founded a nonprofit around it so that we could kind of give that back to the community. And it is called the TBM Council. We founded it 10 years ago, and here 10 years later, it's now got over 5,000 member organizations. It has created a book, classes, certifications. If you go to LinkedIn and look for TBM in a job description, there are thousands of people now that are TBM certified practitioners. It's humbling to look at what kind of came out of that. But part of this was, hey, it's a problem we're all trying to solve. Let's give back so that we can help everybody else figure out. And it was really organized around 5 kind of pillars and this idea of getting the value conversations that you need to have with your CEO or your board or whatnot, and helping people with that. Well, I just resigned from that board after 10 years. I wanted to step back and let some other folks participate. It was a wonderful experience, and I love all the work and continue to love the work going on there. But a number of us were talking about some of what's happening in the world today. We're all facing, we've global warming, or climate change, whether you look at it man-made or not, or a bunch of, politics aside, there's some real issues in our environment that are occurring. And it feels like we should be doing more. We as technology leaders should be doing more. The analogy the thought process was, hey, digital transformation, you look at companies like, Airbnb kind of disrupted hoteling, Uber disrupted taxis and car services. How come we aren't disrupting the way we think of consuming and using things that net environmental, societal, and governance kind of impacts? So right now, most CIOs, if they're doing kind of a lot in that space, they're kind of building a carbon dashboard to keep track of the carbon credits, or post your ESG score at the end of the year so that your investors know what your water and carbon usage looks like, and so on. And it just feels like we should be doing a lot more.
Right. So you're chairing the board. You've taken that role on, which is a little extra, especially as you're building something new. And
yeah, so like I said, we've got a great board we've pulled together, but we had a set of founding members, and I was one of the founding members that brought that together. We have a great underwriting partner at the moment, in the same way Appview kind of underwrote TBM Council. Delphix is underwriting sustainableIT.org, and we're looking for other partners to participate as well to really create, again, a similar kind of movement where we can help create standards, we can help people, because everybody's trying to figure out, how do I do this? How do I measure this? What are the value streams that I should be pursuing? How do I make a bigger impact on what's happening? And we shouldn't all figure that out alone. Right. We have a lot more power in getting smart people together in a room. And that's happening. We've had a number of very active and very engaging board meetings. We're building a research agenda. We're building standards. We've got a standards committee off the ground. We're starting to pull together some existing standards, looking where the gaps are, where there's inconsistency. So for instance, I can go to any of the 3 major clouds, and I can say, I can figure out and I can choose, I want to put my workloads in a data center that's more green, that uses more sustainable energy or is more carbon neutral, than a data center that isn't within that cloud. But I can't tell you, there's no objective measure that says, well, is the Azure cloud different than the AWS cloud or different than the Google? Well, they use their own proprietary algorithm, their own number. So, hey, can we do something that allows us to begin to look and compare things more objectively, that allows us to move forward in a different kind of way?
Well, as a community of CIOs, you'll have that kind of influence, right, to change that conversation. And so, Ralph, you know how much I appreciate the mystery question, the mystery audience question.
Indeed.
And we're here on site at the CO100. And so I get to call on people in person, which is kind of special. Yeah. So one of your great friends, colleagues, peers, Rich Gilbert, just walked in, and I'm going to ask Rich to come over, and he's going to be our mystery questioner today.
Mystery question.
Yes.
Hey, Rich, welcome.
Wow.
Always good to see
you. Absolutely.
Appreciate you being here.
All
Speaking
right.
of storytelling, we have a lot of shared stories together.
I bet. I would love to hear those. So you guys work together at HP. You've been collaborators on a lot of things, sustainability, IT, on the board together, doing some great work. But I asked Rich to come by and help me unpack your superpowers. So, Rich, take it away. What question would you ask Ralph?
All right, Ralph. So we've known each other since 2015. You actually interviewed me for the role at HP. Yeah. And so observing your leadership style over the years, one of the things that I have seen that's your superpower is your ability to connect people and to connect ideas and to be a connector. And I think that's one of the best things that you do, right? As one of your leadership styles is being able to say, if somebody has a problem or if somebody needs a particular skill set or if somebody needs help with something, you tend to bring people in and connect those dots. So I see that as your superpower and would love for you to elaborate on that as a skill and tell us more about that superpower.
So it's interesting. So if I would say I'm kind of average at that. My wife is an amazing connector. I describe her often as the human social network. She just like is out there. You instantly meet people, connect people, and is always just grouping sets of friends who you're like, are they going to work? And then it turns out they're great friends and so on. So I'm kind of inspired by what she does and how she navigates life. In my role, it was interesting. My first CIO job, Symbol Technologies, we did a massive transformation. It was one of those like 90-hour-a-week grinds. We literally didn't know if we would survive. The company every Monday would come up. We'd see if the SEC delisted us or not because we had we had come in to kind of correct some problems. We restated 5 years of the earnings. We had to kind of fire and replace a number of exec staff and so on. It was a big turnaround. And my experience from that was when it was all done, we kind of came up for air. We succeeded. We ended up selling the company to Motorola, and it was great. And then I looked around and kind of went, well, now what? And I realized I'd basically been off the grid and hadn't talked to anybody for the better part of 3 years. And it was like I was coming up for air, and I realized, you know what? This is not a solo activity, particularly in the CIO world. And it took me a while to kind of go out and kind of reconnect the network and figure out what to do next. And from then going forward, I've always made it a very specific, intentional effort to talk to other people, and not just in a networking way, which is sort of like the, hey, what do you do? Can you help me or not? No, okay, yeah. But more of, hey, what do you do? Like genuine interest.
Yeah.
And in fact, I don't know that I embody this, but I try. My father-in-law was one of the nicest, kindest men I've ever known. He passed away a few years ago, and one of the things somebody might say about someone, they're an interesting person, and he was an interesting person. But his superpower was he was an interested person. So he would sit with you, never meet you before, and 30 minutes later, you'd have this conversation. You'd be telling him like your life story, what you're passionate about, and he was genuinely interested.
Right.
That's fascinating. How did you get into that? You must find a lot of meaning in your work. So tell me about that. And you walk away feeling great. Like, wow.
Yeah.
Like, I kind of just spilled my guts to this guy. But if you do that, if you're interested enough about what people are genuinely doing, you try to understand, and then what you find, you'll find somebody else not too long later, and you go, oh, I need to introduce you to my friend, Sunil, because like you guys have a lot in common. He's went through the same thing, and so I just found it was natural to start going, hey, you guys should talk, and I guess that's kind of led to a fairly big network. Although I never kind of think of it that way. I just set up people and I try to do different things, and you try to help.
It's powerful. I think you and Rich both do this really well. You have that combination of, I think it's the right order too. You're interested, but then you're also interesting. You bring that point of view. You bring meaning to the conversation, and so Rich Affleck just became the Chief Transformation Officer, and excited to shine the light on you and your story here soon.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it.
Thank you so much. Ralph, one of your superpowers over the years is your intentionality about developing communities, connecting people, but also developing people. So I want to talk about that in terms of our Tech for Good. We share that passion, right? Mm-hmm. Doing things for our community. We're donating $125,000 of scholarships to our leadership development program. And what we do is we give you the ability to gift a seat in that program, 9-month program, to any of the nonprofits that you work with that you're passionate about? Is anybody come to mind you'd like to gift that to?
I would. So I've been very passionate throughout my career about mentorship, both personally as we've talked today, benefiting from great mentors, but also trying to be a mentor. And I've supported organizations like the Big Brothers Big Sisters of the Bay Area. I was on the board there for 6 years. A great organization. I've been very active in supporting Boys and Girls Clubs, which is a great organization. Somebody called the East Oakland Youth Development Center, which was very active in ones at Clorox. But more recently, I've been on the board of a company called Genesis Works. And Genesis Works, so a lot of folks are looking at, hey, how do I help folks of underprivileged or with fewer means gain access to college and access to jobs and so on in that college cycle. The problem is, if you don't start in high school, they don't go to college. They don't end up there. They don't end up eligible.
Right.
And there are a large number of very shockingly large number of students in America in some of our urban areas that aren't graduating high school, aren't going to college. And so our goal was to try to change it. So Genesis Works is about creating internship opportunities for high school kids in corporations. So they can see the opportunity. They can see that path. We develop training. We work with that. We run a strong program, and we've been able to drive graduation rates and college attendance rates up. And just the way you change lives of the students. Well, we happen to have just hired a new CIO in that organization. And it would be fantastic to have that CIO become a member of the program.
Outstanding. Yeah, let's connect us up, and we'll get Genesis Works on our website as well and promote their good work. So thank you for that. Ralph, let's put an exclamation point on it. We've cut a lot of ground. You've opened your playbook. Great Ralphisms. When we talk, you're always thinking about things differently. The metrics that you hold yourself accountable to, the things that you look at. Are we winning? Are we succeeding? So I want to give you 3 groups of people, and I want you to kind of speak to how you know you're doing well with them. So your last couple CEOs, how do you know you're winning with them?
So interesting. Don Knaus was CEO at Clorox when I joined there. And one of the comments Don made to me, which again was to me very gratifying, was, you don't sound like a CIO. And by that, what he meant was, normally I don't know what you guys are talking about. You're so focused on technology or speeds and feeds or whatever. Like you sound like one of my leaders. Like you sound like a businessman. So that was a very effective and telling, very nice to hear. I think at Lumentum, Alan, a great leader, and I was drawn to his leadership style in the first place. In a recent conversation I had with Alan, he said, you need to do your IT stuff. Like that's fine, and like you're doing fine over there, and like I appreciate the work you're doing, but like you have way more impact when you basically get out of your lane. I know you got the IT stuff, but like I really need your insight and your contribution and what you have to offer in some of the other areas of the business. Working with culture change, working with some other big transformation programs and so on. So that's an affirming comment when they're like, hey, we want more of you and we want you in different places. So I guess that's good to hear. Good to hear from Alan. Yeah.
Yeah. How about your folks? You are you're a talent magnet. People like to follow you, and you've even said you're mindful about where you go with your new opportunities, thinking about your people who are probably going to come with you.
Yeah. I've been blessed enough to have folks, sign up for multiple tours of duty, I guess. So
and they know it's not going to be an easy lift when they're with Ralph Loura, because you're going to go take on a big bold thing.
Yeah,
right?
And we're going to do big things, and it's going to be a heavy lift. And so I've had a number of folks follow me from Clorox to HP, from there to Rodana Fields, and from Rodana Fields to Lumentum. I think a couple of folks have made all the hops, and it's both, like I said, there's a sense of responsibility. Like, hey, these people are kind of investing in me. I want to make sure they're taken care of. There's a level of comfort. Like it's hey, this is our kind of squad. I know what they can do. I know what they're capable of. The whole talking about high performance teams. The trust is there because we've been through a lot together. The transparency is there because we've been through a lot together. And that's powerful. But I never do it. It's never like I'm never intentional. It's like if I go someplace, hey, are there opportunities from others? How would this fit? Would this be a place that folks would want to come? And then it's waiting for them to reach out, right? I'm not, I don't believe in, I build the team and I want that team to be successful. I'm happy to hand off a really great organization to somebody else. And then if organically it makes sense for someone to move, then I'm thrilled to have that opportunity.
Yeah. In the third group, I mean, we had Rich Gilbert stop by. I mean, he was excited to do that. He wanted to do that for you, right? And so you've built a great connection with people. You can call that phone a friend is always there.
Yeah. It's interesting. Like I said, my experience at Symbol really informed that, and from that I've always been much more intentional about that. And it's interesting. I've been part of groups where I was the junior member, learned a lot, and kind of looked up to the other leaders. I was part of groups where I was kind of the CIO of the moment, and others were around, and this groups where there was a gentleman I just got an email from about a week ago who recently retired, but he was probably in his 70s when we met and in his 80s when he retired, and at first it's sort of like a lot of his ideas are a little old school, but the more I listened to Jim, the more I realized there's a lot to learn from Jim. He's been there, seen a lot. A lot of his approaches to things are maybe I would have phrased it differently or framed it in a different way, but the lesson is sound underneath. And so I've had the privilege of working with a lot of people. And then what's nice is if a challenge comes up or a topic comes up that I feel like that I need some help on, you can kind of set up the virtual back channel, right? And you send an email out. Recently we were looking for input on a couple of things. We were setting up a IT steering committee and trying to be a little modern and different about how we're doing it to deal with some of this big business transformation we're doing. So I sent an email out to kind of a mailing list of from friends I've kind of kept track of over time, and these are people that have big jobs, and within 2 hours I only had 10 responses with PowerPoint decks and templates, and let me know if you want to talk. And I do the same. If I get a note from somebody, hey, they need help, I'm happy to kick in and share what I know.
Yeah. Well, this has been so fun. I want to thank Delphix for letting us use their studio here on site, on location. I want to thank our videographer, Ronan, who is a real pro. And by the way, a test of someone's character. It's like how you interact with people all the time. Ronan's known you for over 10 years. And before we were getting set up, I said, what's it like? How do you know Ralph? He's like, Ralph he's kind, he's calm, he's respectful, he's a gentleman. He's just got so much respect for you. That's how you show up, Ralph. So thank you, Ronan. Good news, we're gonna have some additional conversation with Ralph on the CIO Whisperers blog next week on CIO.com. We'll talk about Ralph's perspectives on grit and grace and some other great insights. So, well, thanks so much. It's been a real pleasure to be here with you.
Thanks a lot, Dan. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, great stuff.